Thank you for being
Hi,
here.
Mary Wilmer.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you, yeah.
Any chance we'll ever get to be a completely red state and work on these unions?
Oh, yeah.
And become a right to work?
Well, in fact, the
What
big thing
can we do to help you?
We're going to start in a couple of weeks with our budget adjustment bill. The first step is we're going to deal with collective bargaining for all public employee unions.
Right.
Because you divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer.
I mentioned a minute ago that every time we show this thing, and we show it a lot, we get all sorts of feedback from people saying, why don't you show that more? I gotta tell you, we show it all the time and nobody else shows it ever. But apparently it blows everybody's minds every time we show it. And so we'll keep showing it because it is true and it is kind of shocking. But maybe if we show it every day for the rest of the year, it will sink in. I don't know. And what this shows is outside spending in the last election. The biggest outside spenders in the last elections. And for the purposes of talking about partisan politics and what's happening in Wisconsin and what's going to happen in 2012, the important thing about this is that all of the biggest spending on the Republican side is funded by corporations, and all of the biggest spenders on the Democratic side are all unions. So Republicans getting rid of unions means they get to run the table. If they kill unions, there will be no big outside spenders on elections except the spenders who fund them. So they win every election, every state, every year, forever. It's like if you were in a Pinewood Derby race every year, and one year what you decided to do in the off-season was remove the other guy's supply of wheels for the rest of his life. So yeah, you'll still have a race every year, you and that other guy you always race against. It's just that every year from here on out, your car will have wheels and his will not. And so you will win every year. The wheel blockade in that analogy is a very good investment for you. So that's why the chart blows everybody's mind, right? It shows the dynamics at work when it comes to who is giving money.
Super PACs. Everybody is talking about them this election cycle. And while they sound like what you might find in a superhero's tights, they're actually much more creepy. PACs, or Political Action Committees, have been around since the 1940s. They're private organizations that raise money for candidates or issues. Everyone from soda companies to pot smokers can form a PAC. And until recently, there were strict limits on how much money individuals could give to them. That all changed in 2010 when 2 Supreme Court decisions set off a campaign cash-feeding frenzy. One said that laws barring corporations and unions from spending money for political purposes violated the First Amendment. The second one ruled the caps on how much an individual can give to an independent political organization were also unconstitutional. And thus, the Super PAC was born. Technically called Independent Expenditure Only Committees, Super PACs can raise as much money as humanly possible from corporations, unions, and deep-pocketed fat cats. There are absolutely, positively zero limits on how much money they can raise or spend. And while Super PACs are prohibited from coordinating with individual campaigns, they're often run by friends or associates of the candidates. So why does anybody care about these groups? Because we are talking big bucks going into influencing our democratic process. As of March 2012, 364 Super PACs had sucked in more than $130 million and spent more than $75 million supporting their candidate or trashing his opponents.
The biggest Super PAC, American Crossroads, President Stephen Law says he's focused on voters, not on influence. Crossroads was founded by former Bush White House aide Karl Rove. It backs only Republicans, and it's now running ads against several key Democrats, including the president.
President Obama's latest way is still the wrong way.
Law says Republicans need a Super PAC to balance the money that unions give to Democrats.
What is new is that Republicans have finally figured out ways to counter the massive counterweight that organized labor is on the other side.
But Crossroads by itself is hoping to raise $300 million, just under what John McCain, John Kerry, and George W. Bush spent when they ran for president.
Now, it means progressives no longer have a fighting chance at the state level to battle corporate money and, of course, corporate influence. There is no guesswork about what this means because we have already seen the early aftermath of Citizens United. At the national level, well, we have seen how much the Republican Super PAC money has dwarfed Democratic Super PAC money. At the state level, outside money helped Scott Walker outspend Tom Barrett by a score of 7-1. Every week brings more news of the Koch brothers' influence in state politics. A few days ago, they raised another $400 million from fellow billionaires. I guess you could call it the Wild Wild West for corporate interests.
if I become President of the United States, I will curb the practice we have in this country of giving union bosses an unfair advantage in contracting. One of the first things I will do, actually on day one, is I will end the government's favoritism towards unions in contracting on federal projects and end project labor agreements, and I will fight to repeal Davis-Bacon. I didn't know that was going to get that kind of response, right? I'd have said that earlier. I also, of course, are going to make sure that that workers in America have the right to a secret ballot, and I will fight for right-to-work laws.
So what exactly do right-to-work laws mean? Let's take a look inside a factory. We'll call it Tom's Tractor Company. Under right-to-work laws, which came into existence in 1947 under the Taft-Hartley Act, when it was passed by a Republican House and Senate over the veto of President Harry Truman, when a majority of workers vote to join a union and the shops gets unionized, those who don't want to pay union dues don't have to, even though they get the benefits of all the bargaining and all the other work that the union does for them. So those 4 employees at Tom's Tractor Company who don't want to pay for the union will still get the better pay and wages, but they don't have to contribute a dime to it. What happens when that happens? Well, the union loses. It loses money, it loses people, the workers turn on each other, until eventually the union collapses. And then, of course, wages go down, benefits are lost, and working conditions stink again. This is exactly what's played out in states that have so-called right-to-work laws, or as they should be called, right to work for less laws.
California, take a look. Take a hard look into the future and see where your elections are headed. Millions and millions of dollars spent just last month by special interests, shadowy front groups, and super PACs.
Well, you could call them the VIPs of California politics.
The state's biggest political players of the last 10 years have combined spent more than $1 billion to try to influence your vote.
And be warned, super PACs and billionaires buying California's elections will become the law of the land if the Special Exemptions Act passes in November. It's true. A respected LA Times columnist has already predicted that super PACs and independent expenditures will take over California's elections process. And the Special Exemptions Act makes it even easier for those super PACs to gobble up even more control of our electoral systems, while the voices of working families, everyday businesses, and unions are silenced. So get ready for the billionaire oilman Koch brothers, George W. Bush mastermind Karl Rove, Las Vegas casino magnate Sheldon Adelson, and the big oil and insurance companies who will flood our elections with their corporate agenda of unfair tax breaks and more government giveaways for them. As our economy keeps struggling and budgets for local schools, healthcare, and public safety keep getting cut, the Special Exemptions Act will be like Miracle-Gro for those billionaires and their super PACs. So if you think Sacramento is broken now, just think about what's coming next.